Hey friends, I'm here today to talk to you about the differences between Enneagram 1 and Enneagram 3. Before we get into that though, it's really important I think sometimes to talk about the similarities as well. For those of you who are in this type conundrum, I'm sure you've been over these a million times in your head. Both 1s and 3s can be very perfectionistic people who seek a goal, people who are pursuing a project, who are really forward-moving people, and often we call this type A people. So 1s and 3s can both come across as like pretty rigid on the exterior and very put together. They both like to present themselves in that way to the environment and to a social setting as having it all together. Now, the reasons for doing this are very, very different, and that's where our misidentification conversation comes into play. So 3s and 1s have very different values. 3s tend to have the value of pursuing a goal or being type A in order to achieve the culture's ideal, in order to be held up as this example of success or example of the ideal. 1s, on the other hand, also pursue a goal or can come across as type A in the pursuit usually of justice, or in the pursuit of what's right, what is good, and what is a lot of times what they see as the only choice or the only good thing or the only good option. So when 1s pursue very doggedly and 3s pursue very doggedly goals in their lives, it's with these different ideals in mind. Now, that also means that 1s and 3s have really different shortcomings. So when we look at Enneagram 1, their main shortcoming is that core sin of anger and that core sin of sometimes holding themselves as holier than thou, or it's this sort of pharisaical view of other people. And that when things aren't right, or when things aren't good in the eyes of a 1, or when things are not all working together, 1s can start to feel frustrated and start to feel angry and start to feel resentful towards anyone or anything that's impeding that, or that's causing things to be unjust or causing things to be incorrect. So because 1s have this gift for being able to see the way that things fit together, or seeing the way things should be in the world, that often causes them to be disappointed idealists in some ways, so that anger can rise up in 1s. The core sin on the other side for 3 is deceit. So 3s, in their dogged pursuit of achievement, in their pursuit of having value in the eyes of the culture or having value in the eyes of their loved ones, really can fall into that sin of deceit and self-deceit. And this is a huge difference actually between 3 and 1, in that 3s tend to put on different masks in different arenas in order to achieve what they want to, or achieve what would give them value. So they're very flexible in their identity. And a lot of times this is a downfall for 3s, because at the end of the day, when they sit with themselves, often 3s have trouble knowing who they are really at the core, and really knowing, okay, so I've pursued all these things, I've worn all these masks, or I've presented myself in all these different ways in order to succeed, and that's great. People love me for it, but like, who am I underneath? Like, who am I really? On the other hand, 1s don't really struggle with that. 1s tend to know who they are, and it tends to be very black and white. So I would say that's a huge topic to consider if you are in this type conundrum, is with 1s, they don't tend to struggle to know who they are as much as 3s do. They tend to be more decisive people. 3s, though they are very type A and forward moving, tend to, when it comes to things of identity or things of the heart, tend to be very flux people. And that is why too we see with 3 health lines to 6 and to 9, because they really, those 3 types are really our most indecisive and our most sort of flux people who tend to be more sponges for the environment. 3s, I think especially we can use that term, because 3s disintegrate to 9. So they tend to really, when they are under stress, just really think a lot more about what others want from them and what others want them to look like, or what others want them to succeed at, and really meeting those benchmarks and absorbing like a sponge what other people want them to be and who other people want them to be. Ones, on the other hand, are not nearly as flexible people. They tend to be much more rigid people at the core, not just looking that way, but actually functioning that way in their lives, and sometimes very stubborn in their ideals and in their moral convictions and things like that. And that can be for the good or it can be for the bad. So, but when we see those differences, that really helps us to discern between 1 and 3, is that ones don't struggle as much with knowing who they are. Actually, most ones that I've known actually type themselves pretty quickly. So if you're torn in this equation, I think it's more commonly 3s who are unsure if they're a 1 than it is 1s who are unsure if they're a 3. I'm just thinking of even ones that I know, and I have one friend who considered 3, but it was really just a very brief consideration. Because those ideals of the pursuit of success at the hands of deceit and the pursuit of justice, sometimes at the hands of anger, can look pretty different, even though these types on the outside can look very similar. Especially in our culture right now, with the movement of sort of modern minimalism, both of these types kind of fall into that physiologically in the way that they present themselves. But yeah, it's really important with the Enneagram always to come back to these why questions. Not what are they doing, but why are they doing it? So that is really what makes Enneagram a unique tool that separates it from all the other tools that I've seen thus far, in allowing us to take this tool and use it actually to grow. So both these types obviously have different growth paths as well. I described 3's path under stress, but when 3s are healthy and really functioning in a emotionally and spiritually balanced place, they can move towards 6, which uses all of their really their gift for wooing people, their gift for knowing what people want, and takes it off of the self and sort of that narcissistic focus and puts it on the group and says, how can I use my gifts to bless this group, whether it's a corporate environment, or whether it's a family environment, or whether it's a sports team, what have you, or in the military. It's really takes the focus for 3 off of the self and saying, how can I further myself? How can I gain accolades for myself? And looks to the group and says, wait, like, how can I help this group succeed? How can I help this group achieve? 1, on the other hand, when they're moving towards health, moves towards 7. So when ones are under stress, they move towards 4. Actually, I'm going to cover that in one of my IGTV episodes coming up. Actually, just kidding. I already covered 1. So if you want to go check that out, it's on my IGTV. I've covered 1 through 4 so far, but to just reiterate, when 1 integrates to 7, that looks like really becoming less rigid and allowing the self to experience more, and not focusing so much on minutia and what's right and what's wrong, but knowing that through experience they can achieve actually more accurate judgment. So ones tend to struggle with false judgment and sort of, like I said, that pharisaical view sometimes of other people, and judging very quickly, judging very rashly, and going to anger. And when ones integrate to 7, they can really experience something first, or experience a person first before they pass judgment. Healthy ones, I do want to say though, still are discerning people. They don't just throw their judgment out the window, but they do so much more with that desire to experience, as I said, the things or the people or the environments first before they pass judgment. So that it's much more altruistic there in the truest sense, and that they are able to engage that that non-judgmental side and find balance in their judgment. So these are some of the big differences between 3 and 1. From a motivational standpoint and from an integration-disintegration standpoint. Obviously, wings make a huge difference. That's why I did a full series here on YouTube on wings. If you want to check out my 3 wings video or my 1 wings video, feel free to look for that on my channel wall. Actually, I probably could link to that below, so I'll try to do that. Also, check out my Instagram. I have, as I mentioned, stories started on what the health functions look like in each type. I also have just posted all of my infographics for instincts for each core type. So instinct specific or core type specific instincts based on lectures by Claudio Naranjo and the way that he described those, which I think is really the best one I've ever heard. So those are really helpful too. If you are a 1 or a 3 and you just kind of feel like, I'm not the stereotypical 3, go look at those instincts and look through them, the social, the sexual, and the self-preservational, and see if you can see yourself a little bit more in one of those. Sometimes our descriptions, whether written or video or audio, what have you, of just the core type, run too narrow and don't include all of those instincts. So feel free to check that out, check out the Wings videos, and I'll see you guys next time.